Okay, so this is the first part of a 3-part series where we will do live script breakdowns. So these live script breakdowns will show you behind the scenes into what your scripts actually have to look like, what are the different elements of the scripts that you need to have. And if you know these specific elements, then you will be able to write really great scripts, right? And your clients will be really happy. They won't ask for as many revisions, and you will be able to find a system and spend less time writing scripts and more time finding clients. And that way, if you can spend less time writing scripts, number one, you can have more clients, or with that specific client, you can write more scripts with them, and that way, you'll be able to make more money in the same amount of time. So here it is. So this is the first video that I want to go over. It's the Caddy cabin murders. So one of the really great things that this script does is that it has a key, right? It tells you what the B-roll is. It very clearly does research on the B-roll, what images, what videos are we going to use, what animations and sound. So over here, right, it very clearly highlights here B-roll, sound, B-roll. So that way the script is actually directing the direction of the video, right? It is telling the editor how we want the specific video to go. It's telling the voiceover in what tonality do we want to use for this specific video. So over here, right, as you can see, I'm just scrolling through here. You can see there's a bunch of images that the editor could potentially use, or if you want, you can add sources over here. So I'm gonna go over the actual script for a little bit. So over here, right, it starts with B-roll, right, eerie sounds. In the quiet town of Keddie, California, a calm night in the woods turned into a blood-covered small town nightmare. So over here, the hook is already very strong, right? So the hook, is the first 5 seconds, the very first line. It has to be very strong. So over here, in a quiet town of Keddie, California, so it sets the scene. A calm night in the woods turned into a blood-covered small town nightmare. So over here, it's really, really curiosity-inducing. Oh, what? How is it blood-covered small town nightmare? That sounds very interesting to me, right? And then over here, right, on April 12, 1981, Glenna Sue Sharp and 5 of her children peacefully slept in cabin number 28. So here, image, right? What followed was not just a tragic crime, but a tangled web of conspiracies and cover-ups that shrouded the truth in darkness. So here, in the very first introduction, in the hook, right, we set the context, which was, what's going to follow is a tangled web of conspiracy and cover-ups that have shrouded the truth in darkness. So there's kind of like a curiosity feel. It's like, what's actually going to happen next? That kind of sets the scene here. So in the hook, it very clearly establishes, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. The first line is very engaging, and there's some curiosity. So this is a really strong hook already. Also, we added a bunch of pictures over here. And then the next part is like setting the scene, right? So if it's a crime documentary, right, we set the scene, right? Nestled in the town of Keddie, population 66, cabin 28 was a haven for Sue Sharp, right? A mother who was seeking solace from a family of 5 away from her abusive husband, right? Sue stayed home with the children, and now without her ex-husband's income, the family was desperately poor. But despite this, they were attempting to make the most out of their new life in the woods. Sue had hopes for the future. The family was settling into the small rural community, making friends and finding joy again, right? More images here. This was shattered by the brutal acts that took that future away from them. So here, there's kind of like a curiosity, right? So we set the scene, and then there's a curiosity here. On the night of April 11th, 1981, Sue's 14-year-old daughter, Sheila, was having a sleepover at the neighbors, the Seabolts. So this is where we kind of transition to, okay, this is the start of what's going to happen. So we already set the context. So over here, this is what's happening. And then there's one event that will change everything. So we're about to dive into that. So animation starts, right? As she wandered back to her home in the early morning after a quiet night in the forest, she could never have guessed what would be waiting for her as she walked up the steps, opened the door, and made a horrific discovery. Her home had been transformed into a brutal crime scene. Laying on the floor of her living room were 3 dead bodies, which at the time she didn't even recognize, as the bodies were so brutally injured and bound. On top of this, Tina, Sheila's sister, was missing from the scene, adding to the shock and confusion of the discovery. In a panic, Sheila ran back to the Seabolts' house next door, where she was staying, and screamed, "There's 3 dead bodies in my house," right? The Seabolts then called police, who sped to the scene to investigate. So if you notice something about the words that we're using here, it's actually really simple, right? It's very simple language. Okay, staying and screamed, right? Nothing too complex. Everything's below, a 3rd grade or 5th grade level. And then over here, investigating a crime scene. So this is the next part. In the cabin on the night of the murder, Sue and 5 children were present in the house. 15-year-old John, 12-year-old Tina. So here, very clearly, we add everything that the editor might need. Over here, right, the crime scene presented a gruesome picture that indicated a vicious and personal attack. The 3 bodies discovered by Sue's 14-year-old daughter Sheila were bound with medical tape and electrical cords, suggesting they had been restrained and possibly tortured before being killed. The living room, where all the murders had reportedly taken place, was splattered with blood. Sue Sharp was found lying on her side near the living room sofa, gagged with a blue bandana and her own underwear, which was secured with tape. Right. Terrible stuff. The autopsy reports later revealed that Sue had suffered multiple stab wounds to her chest and a horizontal cut across her throat, alongside a blunt force trauma on the side of her head that matched the butt of a Daisy 880 Powerline BB pellet rifle. So what's really good about this script is that, number one, it's very specific, right? It really paints the picture of what actually happened on the scene itself, right? So blue bandana, her own underwear, right, secured with tape, suffered multiple stab wounds to her chest, horizontal cut across her throat. So it is very specific here, right? And it's very specific without using any big words, any jargon. So because it's so specific, right, the viewer, right, even just reading this, I can actually visualize, I can visualize what's happening on the scene itself, right? The combination of stabbing and blunt force trauma suggested a high level of rage directed at her. Her son, John, and his friend, Dana, were also victims of severe violence, right? John's throat had been cut, and Dana exhibited multiple head injuries and had been manually strangled to death. So this script combined with the editing should be pretty good. It's looks like a pretty interesting scene to set. Right, the brutality inflicted on both young men, involving both stabbing and blunt force trauma, indicated that the assailant or assailants had not only intended to kill, but to inflict maximum harm before death. Interestingly, despite the chaos at the scene, Sue's 2 younger sons, along with their friend Justin Smart, were found unharmed in an adjacent bedroom. So here, it's investigating the crime scene. So the way that this kind of goes is like, okay, we set the scene, we saw the animation, and then, you know, like all of these things happen, and now we're investigating the crime scene. So it is as if we're taking the viewer along the ride of us, where it's like, okay, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, right? And the viewer is also like, okay, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? And then we move on to a community reaction, right? The brutal murder sent shockwaves through Keddie, shattering the illusion of safety. Fear, suspicion, and wild speculation gripped the residents as the reality of the horror that occurred amongst them began to sink in. So stalled leads, right? So this is another thing which happened. As the investigation dragged on, initial leads dried up, right? Many pointed figures at the abusive ex-husband, but he had a rock-solid lead and was soon ruled out, and all other promising trails turned cold. As the community's patience waned, the mystery deepened, casting a long shadow over the town's once peaceful existence. The house was eventually demolished, and Keddie no longer was a destination people wanted to visit, as its name became synonymous with these crimes. If you don't believe me, Google Keddie. Nothing comes up but the Cabin 28 murders. The once sweet, peaceful retreat has turned into a ghost town, with the cold, true crime enthusiasts passing through. So here, right? Very clear language. It's very easy to follow. So next, renewed investigation and revelations. Right, years later, new investigators revisited the cold case, unearthing overlooked documents and evidence that had been neglected. Among these was a crucial clue pointing directly to Marty Smart, a local with a complex and troubling connection to the Sharp family. So here we kind of find evidence, and then it's kind of resolved that he's caught at the end, right? So that brings us to the end of the video. What do you think happened in Cabin 28? Do you agree that Marty Smart and Bo were the perpetrators of this horrific crime? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to get the latest true crime videos straight to your subscription box. Catch you in the next video. Bye. So over here, right, the way that we do a call to action is that we always pose a question at the end, right? We try to pose a question at the end. And the reason that we try to do this is because we want the viewers to comment, right? And we also want them to leave with a certain emotion, right? Oh, I actually don't know, right? There's some sort of disgust here, there's some sort of contempt, right? Maybe a little bit in these specific ones. So let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. So the call to action here will be like and subscribe. And then catch you in the next video. Bye. So this obviously depends on the specific voice of the video that we're making. But yeah, that's the review of the Keddie cabin murders. The things that it did really well, really good sourced images, really good B-roll. It directed it really well, and the language is incredibly simple, right? If you actually look at the script, it's not very difficult to write the script. If you actually ask yourself, can I write a script like this, and can I get paid for it? 100% you can, right? Very simple language and really good storytelling is all that we kind of need over here. So we're going to review the next script right now.